Hello everyone and welcome to Call Sign Charlie Models. Time for another inbox review, and we have another beautiful Tamiya kit coming up today. And I can say that this kit will not be a first impression because I've built one of the variants of this kit a few years ago, so I do know a little bit about this kit. And like I said, it's an absolute beaut and it falls together. It's, one of the best kits I've ever built before. So what we are doing the inbox review for today is the Tamiya F4U-1D Corsair right here. So again, absolutely gorgeous box art right here, and I'm going to get the camera turned around and we can start getting into the instructions, the decals, and all the plastic parts that are included in this kit. So give me 1 second and I'll be right back. Alright, so starting off with the top box art, typical of Tamiya, we have absolutely gorgeous box art right here. We have kind of an embossed F4U-1D from Vought right here on the top. And then we flip over to the side. We have two different paint schemes to go off of. We have VMF 351 USS Cape Gloucester, Okinawa, early in 1945. Then we have VF 84 USS Bunker Hill, Iwo Jima, February of 1945 right here. Then we flip it over to the other side. We have some nice pictures of the actual built model with the engine, the cockpit, the full plane, and then we also have the plane up on the flight stand that's included. This also does include a couple of photo etch frets, a mask, and some rubber wheels. Alright, so we open up the box and let's see how packed of plastic it is. And it is fairly decently packed with plastic. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get everything set up and we can start going through all of the plastic and everything in this kit. So give me 1 second, I'll be right back. Alright, so starting off with the instructions, we have just a copy of the box art on the front of the instruction booklet. It is in black and white here. This is also kit number 60327 as well. We have a total wingspan of 390 millimeters and a fuselage length of 318 millimeters, which equates to 15 and a quarter inches roughly, and then 12.5 inches in standard units for those in the US. Now, going along with the instruction booklet, we have a nice little history in multiple different languages here, going on with English and everything through here. And then we keep on going. We have more history in different languages. We also have the instructions, like some painting tips and stuff, also in different languages in here. We have our paints required for this kit down here, all of course using Tamiya colors on there. And then continue on, we have more tech tips going on with different options for that. And then marking options, we have two, right? So we have the two that we had on the box, VF84 and VMF 351. So the one for VMF 351 is a FG1D, and the one for VF84 is F4U-1D. So pay close attention to that. Make sure you decide which one you're going to do beforehand, because I'm sure there's going to be some differences later on in the kit between the two. Alright, so now we're starting off with our kit, working on our cockpit. We got our sidewalls going in here, and then a few other panels and detail going on right in there as well. And then after that, we're starting off with our front bulkhead, and we have some hosing to go on here, and then we have a paint diagram on how to paint our instrument panel. After that's done, we're attaching another piece to our bulkhead with our rudder pedals, and then we have a little piece to cut off right along here, and then we're adding in a couple more pieces. So it's going to be a very nicely detailed cockpit, straight out of the box. Now for me personally, I use the Edward cockpit, but for out of the box, I know this kit will work very nice as well. And then we're adding more detail parts here, and then adding that into the cockpit assembly. Then our instrument panel, which again is a two-part. So we have the front face right here. We have a clear part to work with our dials, and then we have a decal that goes behind that to really give that glass look on all of your instrument dials. And then after that, we are getting that attached to the cockpit tub. Then moving forward, we're working on our seat belts. We do have photo etch seat belts to add in. Looks like they're going to be fairly nicely detailed. Again, I think I'm going to go with the HGW seat belts because those just look a lot better than photo etch seat belts. Alright, and then moving on, we're adding in a bulletproof plate and then our seat right here, getting all that done, and then we're adding in the seat belts, getting all those attached, and then we're adding some framing to the back bulletproof plate and wall back here. Getting all that done, we have an oxygen bottle to add. Then we're getting our seat. We also do have a decal to add to that bulletproof plate as well before we get everything else done, so pay close attention to that. Alright, then if you're going to use your pilot, you're adding your pilot in with your seat belts, getting all that in, and then you're getting that rear bulkhead added to the front cockpit section along with your instrument combing, and then also your control stick, and you have all the pieces to add to your instrument combing right here. Then moving on, we are working on our tail section, getting all of that done. I'm going to have to find the salmon pink for this right here, but again, moving on, we're adding in more detail parts onto our cockpit, sidewall detail, and everything right in there. Then continuing on, adding more parts to our fuselage. We're getting that tail section added in, and then also a rear fuselage part to the cockpit as well. And then repeating for the other side, we have just different detail parts going in for the cockpit area, our throttle quadrant, and all that going in. Alright, after that's done, we're getting the two fuselage halves together. We have a few little bulkheads to put in, and also a frame support, couple frame supports in here as well. Alright, so after this, we are adding in our exhaust pipes and getting all those in. Now I will say, when I built this kit previously, I did buy the Edward engine set that had all this included, and I ended up just using the kit part because the kit is just as good as the Edward stuff. So you can save your money and you don't need to buy the Edward engine because the kit engine is just as beautiful as what the Edward is. Alright, so moving on, we're adding in a few more pieces. We do have a hole to drill out right here. Then we're adding in another piece onto our fuselage, and then another one in front of our canopy. And we do have a couple things to cut off right in here as well. Alright, and then moving on to the engine. Like I said, this engine builds up to be absolutely gorgeous. No need for aftermarket on here. Just adding in all the detail parts in there. Plenty of detail going on. Very nicely done with the detail on this engine. Getting all of that assembled, front and back cylinder banks all getting assembled, and all of that going on. Absolutely gorgeous when it is built up. Alright, then moving on, we have getting all of that done. We are getting our engine attached to our fuselage. Then we have a few panels to add to that. And then after that's done, we are starting with our horizontal stabilizers, getting those done. We have a few detail parts. We have the option of having them in the up or down position as well. And then we're getting those attached to our fuselage, and then we have a couple of pieces to add to the fuselage as well in that step. Alright, so after that, we are working on our tail landing gear, getting all that assembled right there. As you can see, we do have the option of having it up or down. As you can see right here, we have the option of on the ground or in flight as well. Alright, so options 40 through 78 are for the extended wings on this kit, and then after that I'm assuming that we're going to have the folded wings instruction. So going through the extended wings, we're going to be adding in all of our oil cooler parts, getting all that done, getting that assembled. We do need to paint up right in here. You will be able to see this because the cockpit floor is open, so you can see all of this bottom right here. After that, we have our wing spar, and then also the wing spars for our extended wings right there. Getting all those added, and then we're also adding in our flap well detail right in there. And then we're adding in some landing gear, well, compartment details, getting all that done, and you have a nice picture from the overview on how that is supposed to look when it is assembled. Alright, then after that we have a few more parts. We're putting some pins through the cockpit walls right there, and then adding the sealing to the cockpit wall, or not the cockpit wall, the landing gear wall right there. We also have a few detail parts to put into the fuselage as well for our cockpit. Alright, after that we are adding some more detail parts to our wings, and then moving on we're adding some more detail parts to our landing gear bays, and then we're also adding some covers for those oil coolers as well. And then after that it's all done, we are getting our top wings put together. Alright, moving forward we have some more parts to add to the midsection of our wings as well. And then we are attaching all these parts to our wings, which will be in the down position or extended. After that's done, we are getting the center wing section attached to the fuselage, and it has a nice little way of showing you how to attach the wings to the fuselage right there. Alright, then after that we are working on our main landing gear, getting that done, and we have some decals to add to this as well as some brake line detail going in there. So some very nicely detailed landing gear going on. After that we are getting our landing gear attached to the fuselage. We also have a couple of plates to add that go around that as well. And then we're looking at our landing gear doors, getting all those on. We have the outer and inner doors, so different detail parts for those. And then we're getting those attached, and it also has a nice little picture of how those are supposed to look when they're on. So one is straight down and one is kind of at an angle right there. And then if you're doing it in the in-flight, you have the closed door option as well. Alright, then continuing on, we're adding in more detail parts, starting with their flaps, getting all that done right in there. It looks like there's going to be a good amount of detail on there. Getting all that on. We do have the option of having the flaps up or down, as you can see. Getting all those detail parts in. A lot of detail going in on this kit. Then after that we have the instructions on how to mask our canopy. We'll be going through the mask here in just 1 second. Then we're adding in some rear view mirrors, and then our gun sight right here into our forward canopy, and we also have the mask for that as well. Alright, then after that we are working on our outer wings, getting the upper surface detail done, and then just adding more upper surface. We have the option of having these in the up or down position as well. And then again adding more detail to the wings, getting all that done. We have some wing spar support right in here, so that's going to be nice and supported, nice and strong on that, and getting all that. The one negative side to this kit is that there were no gun barrels included in this kit. So even though the gun barrels were kind of recessed back into the gun ports, if you were to take a flashlight and look into it, it's just blank. There's nothing back there. So what I did was I took some brass tubing and put it in there just to help give that, if somebody was to take a flashlight and look back there, there were gun ports back there. So that's one thing you kind of want to look into when you're doing this kit, because there are, like I said, no gun barrels included in this kit. Alright, then continuing on, we're adding more, attaching the ailerons, and then also our wingtips right here. And then moving on, we have our rockets to add if you want to. Get those added on, and then more flaps for our outer wings right through there. And then after all that's done, we are sliding the wings onto the center wings and getting all that attached. If I remember correctly, that was a pretty good fit. It didn't take much putty to get that area done. Alright, and then we also have a few little parts to add in right there for our wings. Alright, then after that we're working on our vertical fin, getting all that done with our rudder, and then adding in a few pitot tubes, antenna, and our vertical stabilizer, and then our canopy, getting all that assembled. And then we are adding in our prop, getting that all assembled, and then we have our engine cowls going on as well. Alright, so now if you want to do in the folded wing, we're going to be repeating a lot of the steps that we just did. as you see right here, is all a repeat of what we've already done. Just moving forward, keeping on going. It's a repeat. I'm not going to go through all these steps individually all over again. But as you see right here, we do have a little bit of a difference. So we are starting to add detail to the wing fold area right here with all the pistons and actuators and hosing that go into the wing fold area, as you can see. So there's going to be a lot of nice detail in this wing fold area. Then you also have your wing spars that are at a different angle, which is going to help support the folded wings right there. Alright, so that was basically the only difference so far, was these few steps right here. So 89, 90, and 91 so far, the only difference from what we had in the previous section. So moving forward, again, same thing with our main landing gear, getting all the hosing and cable detail and all of that attached with our doors. Same thing with the picture right there. And getting all of our flaps done, we have the option of having them in the up or down position again. Getting that all done, as you can see, moving right along. Again with the canopy, same detail, same thing with the flaps all around. We do have a little bit of detail and some decals to add into the fold area right in here as well. Alright, and then continue on again, same thing as before with the rockets and our flaps going on. We do have some detail to go onto the flaps as well, because you will be able to see them in this position if they're in the down position. So getting all that done, and then we have some wing fold supports to go into the fuselage as well. And also, as you can see, we have some more detail to add into the wing fold area as well. After that's all done, we are getting the wings attached to the wing spar, and then you can see it's basically step 1, 2, and 3 for attaching your wings to this part. Then after that, we have some more supports to go on. It looks like have to figure out how that goes on. Just repeating for left and right. Attaching the outer wing flap rods, getting all those attached, and then again we're starting with our vertical stabilizer and rudder, getting our canopy and all of our pitot tubes on, again with our propeller and the engine cowls right there. Alright, then moving on to the last few steps, we have a fuel tank and a bomb, and then our pylons to go on there. We have the different loadout options going on right there, and then we have our pilot figure. We have the standing and seated pilot right here, and then we also have the option, we have a nice in-flight stand to use if we decide to put it in flight, and it shows you where and how to attach that to the aircraft. And then finally at the very end, we have our parts callouts right through here. They are all very nicely numbered, easy to read, so you can find all your parts if you need to on this page right here. And then again with all the other things that are included in this kit, we do have poly caps, some nuts for our screws, and then a couple shafts. We do have rubber tires, a screwdriver, paint mask, and 2 photo etch frets included in this kit. Alright, moving on to our color callouts. Alright, we have some very nice large color callouts that we can use on this. Looks like we're going to be doing the all over blue on this one. Again, nice detail work, nice decals all the way through. I don't know how well these decals use. I used aftermarket decals for the previous Corsairs I did, but I also do know that Tamiya decals can be very thick and difficult to work with. So definitely going to look into getting some aftermarket decals for this kit right here. And then we flip over to the other side. We have another option. This is for the FG-1D. Again, nice color schemes, but again, I'm not sure on how well the decals are going to work out for this kit, because Tamiya typically has some major issues with their decals. Alright, up next we have another little booklet, and this booklet is just chocked full of all the reference, the history, and everything that you need for this kit to actually make it look like an accurate Corsair. Right here we have all the different model history and all the differences between all the different Corsairs right there, and then we have more reference photos right here as well. And then moving on through the book, at the very end we have all the nice color reference photos, even showing like how the chipping and weathering would be done on your rudder pedals and all that through here. So that is nice reference to add, and really going to be helpful on painting and weathering your aircraft. And also with the engine, it also has some nice reference photos for your engine as well, and the rockets if you plan on using them, and the wing fold area, helping get all those accurate colors in there as well. The one thing I am not seeing a picture of is inside the tail wheel bay, because that is pretty much a pretty nicely contested debate on what color the wheel well is on the Corsair. Some people say interior green, some people say salmon pink, but we'll have to see. I think I'm going to go with the salmon pink on mine. Alright, moving on to our first decal sheet. Alright, the decals, they do feel a little bit thick, and there is a good amount of carrier film, like around the 183 here. There's a good amount of carrier film. These right here are cut pretty close, and they actually have the demarcation lines between the tape, because this was actually just tape put over the seals right here, so it wasn't actually painted on for that. But again, some nice, I mean, these feel really thick all around, so definitely gonna want to get some aftermarket decals for this, because this one feels a little bit thin, but the rest of them, I mean, it feels like I'm reading Braille when I rub my finger over it. That's how thick these are. Then we have another decal sheet, and again it feels like I'm reading a Braille book right here, because these are very thick on the decal wise. So I will definitely be looking at getting some aftermarket ones. And for these walk areas, I'll probably just paint these on as well. So again, very thick decals. These are going to be an absolute nightmare to deal with if you're going to use these. Alright, and then moving on, we also have our canopy mask right here, and then also a nice little placard for our in-flight base if we decide to use that. Now, the one thing about the canopy mask are they are not laser cut, so you will have to cut all those out individually, being very careful with a very sharp hobby knife to get those cut out right along the line so you don't mess up your paint job on the canopy. Alright, up next we had a bag that has a screwdriver. Again, if you have a lot of Tamiya kits, you probably have a lot of these little screwdrivers. I think I'm up to like 10 or 15 of these now. We also have another bag of little screws. There's only one screw, 2 pins, and 1 nut to go on to this kit. So it's not like the standard Tamiya kit that is basically bolted together for strength. So definitely going to want to make sure that your glue areas are nice and dry. And then finally we do have some rubber wheels. The rubber tread on here does look very nice. We do have a slight seam line going down the middle of it. Let me get you zoomed in so you can see. As you can see, the tread detail on here is very nice. There's no sidewall detail, but I don't think these wheels actually had any sidewall detail in real life. But again, these do look fairly nice. They feel nice as well. So I'm not sure. I might be using these. I might get the Edward wheels. I'm not 100% sure yet. Alright, so up next we have our photo etch frets. We have 2 of these. We have our seat belts again. Alright, so the seat belts do look like they're fairly nicely detailed on them. Again, I'm more of a fan of the HDW or the 3D printed seat belts than these steel / photo etch seat belts. They look a lot better in my opinion than the photo etch. Plus paint and everything likes to chip off of these a lot easier. But moving right along, we have all the framing and everything. Our rear view mirrors all looking very nice. It is a nice thin photo etch. It's not too thick right there. And then on our other one, we have some grilling and some framing right here for our wings right there. And then you can see all these other little pieces that are going to be going on. So a lot of nice detail included in there. Alright, up first we have a double sprue right here. We have our vertical or our horizontal stabilizers, it looks like, and we have some nice detail on there, some very nice rivet detail. I'm hoping that the camera will pick that up, but we have absolutely gorgeous rivet and panel line detail on these that are, I mean, absolutely gorgeous. Then we have some other engine detail that goes on here, and then our propeller blades as well, absolutely perfectly molded on those. And then our wheel detail, again, nicely molded on that as well. Alright, up next we have another double sprue, and this is our fuel tanks, bombs, props, and rockets. All very nicely detailed on here. The bomb blades, bomb fins, I mean, they are a little bit thick, a little bit out of scale compared to some resin ones, but for out of the box, these do look pretty nice on there. As you can see, that is pretty thick for the leading edge of your fin right there. But all the other detail on here does look very nice. Your rockets do look very nice. They are in one piece, so you just have that one little center seam line to kind of shave off with your hobby knife, and you'll be all set. And also the mounting brackets for those are already attached to the rocket as well. Then we have our rocket fins. Again, those are actually very nice and thin with no issues on that. And then all the other detail pieces going on. As you can see, some of the hosing very fine on those. And again, we get 2 of these sprues. Alright, up next we have our in-flight stand. It's just black, not much to it. Drop a piece in and pretty self-explanatory. Not really going to take this out of the bag. Alright, so up next we have our cockpit detail, and the detail on here absolutely gorgeous, like always, from Tamiya. No issues on any of this stuff. As you can see, everything is perfectly molded on here. The seat, you're going to have some more detail in there. We do have, okay, nope, those are actually meant for the seatbelt. Those are supposed to be there. But all the other detail on here, like right in here, you're going to have a clear part that goes back under there to really give that dial, that glass dial look on that. And then we flip it over for the other side. For this piece, alright, so we do have a couple of ejector pin marks right there and there. So those are definitely going to need to be filled. But other than that, everything else on here, for what I see, all the ejector pin marks are placed in areas that you're not going to be able to see. So actually, maybe these 2 are going to be not visible. So we'll have to check and see. But there are actually, okay, now that I look at it from a different angle, there are a couple more ejector pins like right there, which are very faint, but they are there. You can kind of see it right there on the bottom one when the light hits it. But everything else does look very nice. Alright, so up next we have our engine sprue. And like I said earlier, when I built the F4U-1A, I had the Edward engine, and I built it up and everything, and I looked at this engine and I noticed that this engine looks just as good as the Edward engine when it is all built up. So really, you can save yourself some money and just use the kit engine because it is just as nice as the Edward engine. The Edward engine might have a slight increase in detail, but it is hardly noticeable, especially if you go in there and you add some spark plug cables in by yourself. You won't be able to tell the difference at all. But other than that, the detail on here is absolutely gorgeous. The fit on here is top notch. There are no issues with any of the fit. The one downside to this is the exhaust pipes. As you can see, definitely going to need to drill those out a little bit more to get your pipe effect on there. because that is really the only downside to this whole engine, is those right there, and they're not too bad either. So I mean, take a little bit of time with your micro drill and you can get that drilled out a good distance. I think I got mine drilled out to about right here, and yeah, so that just makes it look a lot better. But the rest of this, like I said, when you build this all up, and just take a little bit of time to add some spark plug cables to it, it looks like an Edward set. You don't have to worry about spending your money on the Edward set. Alright, so now on to our pilot figures. We have the seated and the standing pilot right here. Again, nicely detailed for injection molding. Alright, now there are better options out there with the 3D printing availability out there. Like I know Reed Oak has some absolutely outstanding pilots that you can use. Actually, alright, so here's our kit pilots right here. You can see there's fairly decent detail on those. Okay, now what I'm going to show you is some pilot figures that I've started painting but I never really finished, so the faces are not ready yet. But you can see here, these are our Reed Oak pilots, right? And you can just see the difference in detail on those pilots. Just looking at the difference in the, like, their parachute right here and all that, pulling up the gloves. And once you get the skin painted on these are going to look amazing. I might use these for this build right here. And here's another one showing the different level of detail on this kit as well. So again, all I need to do is paint the skin on these guys and they're going to be set. But I just wanted to show you a comparison between what's in the kit and then what's available with 3D printing. So there you can see the difference. And let's go to the standing one first. Alright, so look at that. That's the difference between what you get in the kit and then a 3D printed one. Right? Alright, now moving on to our clear parts. Clear parts, absolutely gorgeous. I have not seen any issues, no blemishes, no seam lines, no nothing going on these clear parts. Also, the other nice thing about these clear parts are these front canopy right here, or the front windshield. The connection point is far away from the actual glasswork, so if you do need to do some putty work or anything like that, which you shouldn't with the Tamiya kit, it is nice and far away from the clear part, so if you have to sand it down, you don't have to worry about hitting that. So that is a very nice touch on that. The rest of the clear parts look absolutely crystal clear with no issues. These dials are going to look really nice with that decal that goes behind there. So I mean, really nice on that. Alright, moving on to our next sprue, we have a lot of detail parts on here. Our front dashboard, which has a little bit of detail to it, but I don't believe that there's a lot of switches and stuff on the front dashboard right here. Then all the other little detail parts like our radios and everything going on. Then we have the parts for the hump. Again, we have some nice rivet detail on there. I'm hoping that the camera will pick those up. You can barely see them right there. They are nice, subtle, but strong enough that when you do your wash to it, it's going to pick them up real nice. Alright, and then the rest of these pieces in here, all little detail pieces. We flip it over to the other side. Alright, I'm not sure on how much of this you're going to be able to see. I'm pretty sure you're not going to be able to see any of this because there are a couple of ejector pin marks in there. But again, everything else, like our tail wheel area, again, no ejector pin mark. I'm making sure because I think yep. Alright, so there are a couple of ejector pin marks on these doors right here, but they are very hard to see when they're down. Even when they're down, they are hard to see. And then this is our closed option right here for our in-flight. So again, very nice all the way around. Our instrument combing right here, some nice detail on that as well. Alright, moving right along, we have our flap detail and everything going on with this kit, or this sprue. Again, very nicely detailed on here. Not seeing any issues of any type going on. Some very fine detail on here as well. We have some nice rivet detail on this piece right here. I think this is our vertical stabilizer, the front piece of that. But again, very nice. And then everything else on here you're not going to be able to see. So no worries with any of the ejector pin marks on any of this. Alright, coming up next we have some more detail for our landing gear area and such. This is for our tail wheel area. Then we have landing gear doors. We have our tail wheel. Again, two parts, so you're going to have a seam line to deal with in the middle, but shouldn't be bad. And then a bunch of tiny hosing detail right there to go on. Should be very nice all the way around. As you can see, no issues with any of that. Our landing gear struts are nice and two pieces through there. I think there is a hole for a metal shaft to go in to help strengthen those. So that's going to definitely be nice on that. Alright, so up next we have our engine, some of our engine face stuff right through here. Our engine cowl flaps, again, very nice. Along with our Edward or our engine cowls as well. They're molded on these two. Now we do have a few ejector pin marks on here, as you can see. Now if you're going to have this closed up, it's not going to be an issue, but if you're going to pull these off, then you'll need to fill those up or use the Edward engine cowls, which look a lot better. They have a lot more detail on the inside here than what these do. So if you're going to leave it opened up, I would highly recommend using the Edward engine cowls versus these. But if you're going to close it up, then these should be fine. But all the other detail on here does look very nice. On the front engine cowl right here, you can see the rivet detail, very fine and faint right there, but it does show weathering just perfectly. It is like perfect depth where it's not too deep. And yeah, so there's all that. And just real quick to show the difference between the Edward engine cowls and the kit engine cowl. So this is what the Edward engine cowls look like on the inside. Now I have these all painted up, but you can see the difference in detail on these two, right, versus what was provided in the kit. So if you want to go back and like a few seconds and check out the difference between those. I mean, the difference between these are night and day. So like I said, if you are going to leave your engine cowls off, I would highly recommend getting the Edward engine cowl set for this kit. Alright, up next we have the bottom of our center wing spar or section right here. And as you can see, we have some absolutely gorgeous rivet detail on there. That is just absolutely amazing detail, just moving all the way around, as you can see. And the fit on this is absolutely perfect when you put it in. And then on the reverse side, alright, so you're not going to be able to see much of this. This area right in here you're going to want to paint up because you will be able to see it, but it is going to be blocked by a lot of stuff. So you're just going to be able to see it, but don't really worry. Like there's a couple of ejector pin marks right here and here. But again, it's going to be visible but not visible, if that makes any sense. You can't see any detail in there. Alright, so up next we have our fuselage sections, and again the rivet and panel line detail on here is absolutely gorgeous. If you can see that on the camera, it is absolutely top notch on here, and it absolutely paints up and weathers perfectly on here. And then we have a bunch of other detail parts on here, as you can see, like our oil coolers right in here. We're gonna have photo etch that goes in there. And then we flip it over to the other side. We have a little bit of detail going on, a little bit of framing detail. You're not gonna really be able to see back in here. And in here, we're gonna have some boxes and such that go on here to really help liven that up. So that's where we're standing with all of that. Alright, up next we have our wing fold. areas and detail in there. Again, very nice detail moving along. We're going to be adding more detail to all these little parts right here. And then our wing spars, again, nice and bulky and thick, so it's really going to help support the weight of all this on here. We do have a couple of ejector pin marks right here, but I'm not sure on how much of that you're going to be able to see. But again, everything else on here looks very nice. Alright, again we have more detail. This is our upper landing gear ceiling right here. Again, nicely detailed all through there, and then we're going to have all the pins and hoses and all that stuff that go in there really to liven all that area up. We have the doors for the closed position or in-flight position. Again, panel lines and rivets, absolutely gorgeous all the way through there on those. And then we have the two-piece landing gear doors, as you can see right here. So that is really going to look nice when it is all done. And then our giant beefy wing spar right here, which is nice and thick, really helps support the weight of that gull wing and gets the right angles for those gull wings as well. We flip it over to the other side. No issues with anything that's going to be seen. All the ejector pin marks are placed in areas that are not visible when the kit is built. So very nicely done on the engineering on that part. Alright, up next on our penultimate sprue, we have our upper wings right here, outer and inner, and again, the panel line and rivet detail on this, absolutely gorgeous and amazing right through here. As you can see, just everything looks absolutely amazing. And when you paint this up, and I did chipping and everything right in here, and it really brings out the rivet detail on there. And then all the other parts on here just look very nice, very small. Like these parts are going to be for the wing fold areas right in here, and then this part is for some of your flap detail right here. We flip it over to the other side. Really, you're not going to be able to see much of this, if any of it at all, because you're going to have a lot of detail parts that go all around here. So not really worried about any of the ejector pin marks on any of this stuff. Alright, and then onto our final sprue. We have our lower wings right here, and again, panel line and rivet detail just like the rest of the kit. Absolutely astonishing going through here. And then all the other detail on here is very nice and crisp. No issues with any of that. And then we have all of this, which I'm not worried about it, because we have, this is all going to be closed up and you're not going to be able to see any of it unless you cut it open, you make a gun bay or something like that. That's the only way that you're going to be able to see any of this area right here. But other than that, everything else just looks perfect on here. Alright, so that's it for the inbox review of the Tamiya Vought F4U-1D Corsair. I can say from experience, this kit builds up to be absolutely beautiful. It falls together. It's like what I like to call a shake and bake kit. It doesn't fight you. It doesn't cause stress. It is a very fun, easy, I wouldn't say easy, but a fun, easy build. It's depending on your experience levels. But again, I am really looking forward to building this one, especially with the figures that I have for it. I'm going to be doing on the flight deck, just a small flight deck base. But again, like, the only downside to this kit, I think, really is the lack of gun barrels. Even though the gun barrels are recessed in the wings, I think just having something sticking in there, so if you look in there, it's just not a blank space. That's the only thing I have. For the engine's absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely do not need any aftermarket for that. That is absolutely gorgeous. Just do a little bit of scratch building with some spark plug wires and you'll be set with that. Now, the only thing is with the engine cowls, if you're going to have the engine cowls on and closed up, those are perfect. But if you're going to leave the engine cowls off, I would highly recommend getting the Edward engine cowl set for this. The figure, again, looked okay for injection molding. But again, like I said, there are much better, higher quality 3D printed figures out there for this aircraft, like I showed you earlier. The cockpit area, cockpit looks very, very nice. The seat belts are really the only thing I'm really wanting to replace with the some either HGW seat belts or some 3D printed seat belts, which I might be doing a 3D printed whole cockpit, or I might do the Edward cockpit for the set. I'm not sure yet on that. The wheels, they look really, really nice. The rubber wheels look very nice. The wheel faces, they look pretty decent as well. The landing gear struts, they're also going to have metal pins on them, so that's going to help with the support the weight. So all of that's good. The one major downside to this kit, I think, are the decals. The decals were very thick. It literally felt like I was reading a Braille book when I was reading or putting my fingers across the decals. That's how raised and how thick they were on that. So definitely with those, if you're going to use them, be prepared for a battle with the decals, because no matter what you do, no matter what you use, those are going to look like they are raised off, and you're going to have a very hard time getting to get that painted on look on that. So I think that's all I have to say about this kit. For the most part, 99.9% of this kit is going to be an absolutely amazing, fun build, except with the decals. I think that's the only thing that I can think of an actual real negative on this kit. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope that if you're on the fence about getting this kit, I hope this helped you make your decision on whether or not to get this kit. And then other than that, if you haven't yet, don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below. Let us know if you've built this kit before and what you use for decals, or if you did anything different. And until next time, have a great day, stay frosty, and happy modeling.